What's going on, y'all? Harry from Harry the Horse Barbecue here, and in this one, I'm not horsing around with the bark on your brisket. I'm gonna take y'all through how to improve your brisket bark through the seasoning process, how to get that dark Central Texas style bark through the smoking process, and then we'll slice into this beauty of a brisket to see if that bark is really beefed up. Looking to improve your brisket bark? Well, the horses got your back. Let's get it.
Harry the Horse Barbecue.
Now, I've been smoking and eating brisket for quite some time now, and there's always a few things I'm looking for to have the best brisket eating experience possible. You want the top fat and the seam fat to be beautifully rendered. You want tons of smoke flavor. You want that brisket salted beautifully all the way through. And then you're also looking for that dark, rich, Texas style bark. Now, after tons of experimentation using different seasonings, and after working in and going to a ton of different barbecue joints, I figured out that the way I like my brisket bark is super coarse and crunchy. Which is why I've decided to enlist this butcher style coarse black pepper. Now, we're all used to using the 16 mesh black pepper, and that style of pepper plays an important role when developing brisket bark. But when I'm eating a slice of brisket, I want that crispy, coarse, thick, dark bark on the outside. So I'll be testing out this butcher style black pepper and see if we absolutely need it to create the best brisket bark possible. So in order to get the best brisket bark possible, we gotta go shopping for the best brisket possible. Let's go. Ugh, a Creekstone brisket. Good Lord, this is heavy because it's a 16 to 18 pound brisket from Creekstone Farms. Let's stop horsing around and get this brisket out of the pack. Voila! Now, I did have this in the freezer for about 30 minutes prior to trimming, which will help us out. And I'll be using this Dalstrong slicing and brisket knife to trim this up. First step is taking out part of this decal. So all I did was take this decal out here, and this brisket actually is serving as a great learning opportunity for one major reason. Right here, y'all. If you've ever had a slice of fatty brisket and it gets really dry and a weird texture on the end over on this side, that's because when trimming, this section, which is a different muscle, was still attached to this point section. And you can almost see a little seam of fat running right here where the grain structure starts to change. This is that beautiful slice of fatty you want right here. This end right here is not gonna cut it when it comes to slicing up our fatty brisket. But I'm gonna do my favorite part, which is taking off the mohawk. I'm actually gonna try and do this like Cooper Abercrombie, which he kind of comes across. Obviously, I need a little work there, but we'll continue to work on it. All right, that mohawk is taken down pretty nicely, but now at this stage, we have to do some major rounding off. So I'm gonna do it little by little just to be safe. And you can even see there's another muscle hanging on here, but I'm gonna not keep this section. The texture is a little bit different, and it's definitely gonna dry out. Now with that knife work, you can still see that this fat seam has showed up. I think that this is pretty much as far as I'll take that point. I'm gonna round down our fat here, and we're just looking for a 1/4 inch all the way around at this point. Our trim on this point end is looking pretty good. I'm leaving a little extra fat there, I might take that down, but this is completely exposed, so this is where we'll use those foil tents to protect that point. And once I've kind of got this point section squared up, I like to give this brisket a little bit of shape. And this whole treated edge right here, I'm definitely gonna take off. Way better use in sausage than it is in brisket. Not a huge sacrifice, but that looks way better. This also lets you see the thickness of the fat all the way across the brisket. I'll kind of square up this side. Not taking too much off initially. Looks pretty darn good so far. Now at this rate, you can just work down this edge right here until you get your desired amount of fat. Now I'm constantly rubbing the brisket, allowing me to feel the fat. You can see it's still a bit fatty right here, so I'm still working on it. Now at this rate, we can just start to give it some shape. And you can see how thin this is here, so I can pretty much round off that corner just like that. And I can sort of meet that curve. And I'd say overall, that's looking pretty darn good. Beautiful shape to this brisket, including this backside, nice and aerodynamic. I'm digging it. Now, I think it goes without saying that a good trim is vital to a good brisket bark. So let's start seasoning it up. Now for our application here, I am gonna go down with a mustard binder. Not too much. You just want a light tacky coating. So in this case, I am gonna go down with the coarse style pepper first. If you do this afterwards, all of this coarse pepper is just gonna bounce off the brisket and there's gonna be no room for it to stick. So I am gonna go as heavy as I can because this is going to give us the coarse, crunchy bark at the end of this cook. bark. Now on top of the coarse black pepper, I'm just going with a regular SPG. I like to do a 50-50, 16 mesh black pepper to diamond crystal kosher salt. This is a beefy brisket and it can take the salt levels. This also has half a part of granulated garlic in there for that little extra flavor. But now as you can see, this regular homemade SPG is just designed to fill in all those cracks. Pat her in, make her feel loved, and give her a flip around. And we repeat on our presentation side. Mustard, down with our coarse black pepper, and that just looks beautiful over the top of this brisket. Let that coarse black pepper fall on your hands, dap up those sides, and you might say to yourself, whoa, that's a lot of pepper. But when you come back over with that SPG, it just fills it all in so beautifully. That is nice and heavy and looking great. But this wouldn't be an HTH brisket without the following: my homemade seasoned salt lick. And guys, to be honest, I have never oversalted a brisket. This is just gonna add that flavor and that extra punch on the outside of the brisket, on that fat cap layer. And that looks like the most beautiful brisket I have ever seen. So the first step in getting the best brisket bark possible, in my opinion, is going with the coarse black pepper in addition to any seasoning you're using on your brisket. This is gonna add some crunch, a bunch of texture, and a lot of surface area for that smoke to hold onto. In addition, we've got that homemade SPG and that homemade seasoned salt that are really gonna add a ton of flavor and build the foundation of that bark moving forward. So step one is done. So let me take y'all to step two by going to fire up the cooker. Snake nests. All right, y'all, and step two to getting the best bark on your brisket is throwing it on while the cooker's heating up. So I'm gonna get this on in the middle back of the cooker. Something about like that. So during the early combustion stages of wood, you're gonna get a lot more dirty smoke. So this step basically simulates or mimics that cold smoke method that a lot of people are after. And this also gives the brisket a chance to grab onto a ton of smoke flavor early on in this cook. So right now I've got a water pan chilling near the exchange. I've got the damper to the smokestack about halfway closed. And this fire is gonna build in temperatures up to about 225 degrees for the first 3 to 4 hours of this cook. So we'll keep an eye on this beautiful brisket over the next few hours, and I'll bring you back for the next step. But until then, all we gotta do is close it down. Boom, shakalaka. All right, y'all, we're around the 6-hour mark on this brisket, and the only things I've done up to this point are maintain temps and manage the fire. So for the first 4 hours, I was maintaining temps at about 225 degrees, and over the last hour, hour and a half or so, I've bumped up those temps to about 250, and we're getting ready for the next phase. We're gonna crank up these temps. Those low temps in the beginning really help the brisket settle in, accumulate amazing smoke flavor, and really allow that seasoning to adhere to the brisket. This next phase is all about rendering fat, which is a key component when building the ultimate bark. Enough horsing around, let's take a look at her. Now that brisket is looking sweet. I'm hoping y'all can see these big coarse chunks of pepper on here. They are really helping to build this nice bark all over this brisket. A little dark on the point end and a little dark on the flat end. Nothing is getting too dark or burnt. I'm loving the way this is looking. So I'm just gonna come through and spritz with a little apple cider vinegar just on the hot spots, pretty much the perimeter of the brisket, because if you build a bark too fast, you're gonna dry out the edges on the flat here, and you probably end up drying out the point section. Building the ultimate brisket bark is all about taking your time, listening to what the brisket is telling you, and ultimately cranking out the brisket in a variety of stages. So at this stage during the cook, the bark is looking pretty good, ton of smoke flavor, but I think it's an okay move to go ahead and apply some foil band-aids on the point end and on the flat end. This is gonna protect this section, but that bark will still continue to form. But since we still have a ways to go, I don't wanna crisp up the point end and the flat end while the rest of the bark catches up. Now all we gotta do at this rate is close her down. Boom, shakalaka, and now bump up temps to about 250 to 275. That's gonna help accelerate the fat render, continue to darken and crisp up that bark, and we'll have this brisket off to the races. So if you're down for a dark brisket bark, make sure to hit that subscribe button and hang on with me as we move to the next phase of this brisket cook. And after about 11 hours, it's finally time to conduct the last step to building the best bark. But first, let's take an internal temp. I've got this brand new limited edition lavender Thermapen 1. We're sitting about 174, 175, and about 165 in the flat. But at this stage, the wrap could make or break your bark. A full foil wrap could steam it out. A paper wrap could allow you to lose some of that crispiness you built up. So I think for the ultimate bark experience, I'm going foil boat. Throwing this back onto the smoker is going to allow this bark to continuously pick up smoke, allow that fat to render, which is gonna crisp up that bark. So enough horsing around because we're losing temps. So back onto the pit. And this brisket cooked for about 14 hours. Once this brisket hit about 201 degrees internal, I let it rest down at room temperature for about 2 hours, and then I popped it into my oven, set to about 155 degrees for an overnight rest, and it's been resting for about 9 or 10 hours or so. So this is the perfect opportunity to slice in and check our handiwork when it comes to this bark. And this one's feeling pretty crunchy on top. So let's take a look. The Grand Salami. Take a look at this bark on this brisket. But if you could see, this bark is dark, it's crispy, and it's coarse grained. The crispy, coarse nature of that butcher style pepper really comes in handy when building this nice bark. If you want the ultimate bark on your brisket, you gotta follow these steps. So now that we've built this amazing bark, if you're feeling like it needs a little softening up, you can come through with a little bit of those juices. Give that a little tap, 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 tap. And now it's looking glossed up and bossed up. And now you're ready to slice in. Yeah, look at that baby. Look how thick this flat is. Oh my God, beautiful fat render. That bark is almost adhered to all that fat. Look at the seam fat, pretty much entirely gone. Not only did we nail this brisket cook, look how juicy, but we also nailed that beautiful, dark, crispy, thick bark. I mean, y'all tell me about this lean slice. Classic test, no resistance, but I'm going in. That bark is so crispy and crunchy. That is so coarse and beautiful. Tons of smoke flavor, tons of seasoning on the outside there. There's just so much more dimension of flavor and textures going on here. This is how I do my brisket barks literally all the time now. Shout out Hoodoo Brown for kind of inspiring this, but this bark method, in my opinion, is superior to just using the 16 mesh black pepper. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Burnt end time, baby. A little fatty on this still, but I'm not mad at it at all. That's gonna be great with all that bark on there. Although it's a little fatty still, as y'all can see, that fat just melts. It's unbelievably good. That fatty is looking great. And look at this part where we trimmed off. We cut it at the perfect point where all of this texture is exactly the same. This barked up brisket is so good. I just can't stop. No, seriously. Have you seen this slice of fatty? I mean, it's just unreal. And it literally looks like an accordion. One of my favorite bites on the brisket right here. That is stupid good. This fatty slice is not horsing around. It is so perfect. And that bark is incredibly flavorful. Hold your horses. This dark and crunchy bark is ridiculous. It changes up your taste buds and it's like, whoa, crunchy, peppery, salty, fatty. And it's not just one texture all the way across. And when I'm making brisket, that is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for variety and textures and flavors, and this method absolutely does it for me. But at this rate, I don't know what to tell y'all except for stop horsing around and make this already. Yeah, and go ahead and pair this with a beer, or specifically a blue. You'll be glad you did. Thank y'all for tuning into Harry the Horse Barbecue. I really appreciate you checking out this video. Make sure you subscribe for the vibes, hit that like for this briskety bark, and comment down below with how you get the best bark on your brisket. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I'm posting new content, and you can follow me on Instagram at Harry the Horse Barbecue. Tag me so I can see what y'all are cooking because y'all inspire these cooks. And with that being said, there's only one more thing, y'all. This one is going straight to the horse's mouth. We'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace. Best brisket bark for sure.